This video is brought to you by UGREEN. Well, for the first time in a while, all of the iPads, at least the new ones, look the same here. They all lack the home button and they all cost more than 400 USD, which is why it is important to compare these models so you can decide which one is right for you, because there are differences and they are very important. First up, let's touch on displays here. All three of these tablets, the Air 4, the Air 5, and the 10th gen, have 10.9-inch panels here, all coming in at a resolution of 2360 by 1640 with a PPI of 264. So they're all going to be equally sharp. You're not missing out on resolution with any of these. They're all equally bright as well, maxing out at 500 nits just for SDR content. No HDR capability here. They also have the same refresh rate, 60 Hertz across the board. These are not iPad Pros, so you're not getting that deliciously smooth ProMotion, so you're not missing out on that with any of these tablets here. And last up, they all have True Tone, which allows your screen to calibrate itself on the fly to whatever lighting conditions you are in, specifically a given room. So your display is always going to look truly white, regardless of if your room has warmer light or cooler light. I think it's a really important feature, sort of a quality of life thing. But that is where the similarities stop. Now let's highlight the differences. First up, iPad Air 4 and 5 have laminated displays, meaning the glass and the LCD are fused together, so you're literally tapping on the pixels, which I think is the best experience, because when you don't have that, when you have an air gap like you do with the 10th gen, you just kind of have this hollow sound happening, which I don't think is as pleasant, although I'm sure a lot of people won't care. So yeah, there is the glass, there's the LCD, and a tiny little bit of air in between. I think it's cheaper to manufacture, but it's also cheaper to repair, because if you break the glass when it's fused to the LCD, you have to like do some process to scrape it off, and it's just a mess, and the LCD might be damaged. With the iPad 10th gen, if the glass is damaged, chances are you just pop the glass off, put a new panel of glass on, and your LCD underneath is likely to be fine. So if you sell this to, you know, a mom and her kid or a student or whoever, if you're clumsy, if you're prone to break something, it's easier to repair this cheaper as well, because it is cheaper to manufacture, like I said. But a difference that I find more annoying than the presence of the air gap is the 10th gen's lack of an anti-reflective coating here. Look how reflective this is. That's why I have the Air 4 all the way over here, because if I had it right here, look how much worse that is. So when you're outdoors, you have like a light directly behind you, you will have a lot more glare with this display. So keep that in mind. The anti-reflective coating is a bigger deal than you'd think. The last difference I want to touch on is with regard to color. iPad Air features a P3 color gamut with like 1 billion or so colors. The iPad 10th gen features an sRGB panel with about 16 million colors. And I don't really know if I can tell the difference, but if you are doing creative tasks or you want a more vibrant, colorful display, I think you're gonna wanna go with an iPad Air, especially if you're doing creative work, so you wanna have like a more color accurate display for, you know, maybe like video watching or editing or photo editing. I think the iPad Air is a great tablet for photo editing. So if that makes a difference to you, the 10th gen has a less colorful display, although again, all of these are LCD. All of these have the same resolution, brightness, pixel density, all that. So if you're just doing casual stuff, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's also, or of course, something you're gonna wanna keep in mind depending on what you do with these tablets or your tablet that you end up choosing. So my overall recommendation here, of course, is the iPad Air. I think the anti-reflective coating is a big deal. The lack of an air gap is nice too, better color, all of that. But again, if you're just doing casual stuff, the iPad 10th gen is not going to be a bad experience. And keep in mind, if you break the display, especially if you're giving this to a child, it's easier to repair and also cheaper too. Next up, let's touch on design, and it seems pretty simple. They all look pretty similar, and that's because they are. They all take after the iPad Pro, which then inspired the iPad Air 4, which really does inform the design language here, specifically the choice of putting Touch ID in the power button, which is something I really enjoy here. We also have stereo speakers, one on either side, which also brings our attention to USB-C for charging and data transfer, although these ports are not all equal on these tablets, which we'll touch on later here. But the differences begin to show when you see that the 10th gen doesn't support the Apple Pencil 2nd gen. This is something that pissed me off, honestly. I was excited for Apple Pencil 2nd gen to be standard across all iPad models, but no, we couldn't do that. And I believe, my guess is the justification was people already have the 1st gen Pencil, so they could just upgrade if they had a previous gen model. But why not make the iPad compatible or cross-compatible with both? That would make sense. But no, we have to have this whole stupid, you know, adapter situation. So we have lightning to USB-C, and then you charge it by plugging it in. Like, it's definitely not the unicorn situation like we saw earlier, but this is not glamorous. This is weird. Why are you paying $450 for this? Excuse me, 400 or more than 450. You have to pay extra for the first gen pencil. This is now a 7-year-old device. You know, this needs to be put to bed, I think. You know, this is not okay. This whole charging on the tip here, no. The Apple Pencil 2nd Gen is so much more of a sleek solution, a modern one, I'd argue. You know, if you're gonna have a stylus, it should have a place to live. And the side of your iPad is the perfect place, especially if it charges it. So for my scattered self, I'm not losing the pencil, and it's also charging, and I would also forget to charge it. So it's a big advantage here. Also too, you get a little side sensor so you could switch in between two tools. So we can like choose the pen tool here, for example, and be writing like that. Maybe, of course, demos never work. Oh, it's because I'm coloring in black, on black. That makes sense, there we go. So we're using the pencil or a pen here, and then we can switch to the eraser by double tapping on the side. So that's kind of a big deal, although the experience, the pressure sensitivity, the latency is not any different. It also has this matte finish, which I like more. And then when you're done with it, all you do is put it right back, and it's charging. So that's a big reason to buy an iPad, I would say. And the fact that this doesn't support that is a shame. It's just, it's stupid, really. So if you're buying a tablet just to have it be a tablet, then that kind of makes sense. But if the pencil is a reason why you're considering an iPad, I would not go with the 10th gen. It's just a mess. iPad Air is also slimmer than the iPad 10th gen here. This comes in at 6.1 millimeters thick. The 10th gen is like 7 millimeters thick thanks to the non-laminated display or the air gap. So this is a thicker, slightly heavier body without Apple Pencil 2nd gen support, which I will continue to emphasize throughout this video. The iPad Air colors are also more subtle. We have a blue here, which actually is pretty comparable to the 10th gen's blue. We have a lighter blue with the iPad Air. Actually, I'm gonna not hold it right here because that's just glaring. This is what the color looks like, but I'll put it back. Actually, I'll switch these two, honestly, so you can see these colors better. So we got darker blue, we got lighter blue, which looks more like silver, and then we have this like highlighter pink, which I really enjoy, actually. I think this is a great color. But the iPad 10th gen models look more like highlighter colors that you would pick in like 6th grade. Maybe that's the point. So we got more vibrant, punchy colors compared to more subtle colors, and also like a silver and black version if you want, which a lot of people go with. Beyond colors though, the accessory situation is different. As you can see here, the smart connector on the iPad Air is on the back. It is on the side with the 10th gen, which accommodates a brand new first-party accessory, the Apple Magic Keyboard Folio, which is two pieces. One, which is the keyboard here, and another, which is this back portion with the kickstand. So you can open it like this. You also get a function row of keys. So this is basically the Apple version of the Logitech Folio Touch without a loop for your Apple Pencil, if that says anything. It's nice. You can tilt your iPad a little further back, which I like. But other than that, compared to the Magic Keyboard, the typing experience has been similar, the trackpad experience has been similar. So functionally, I think that they're pretty equivalent, although I don't think that the Folio itself is a reason to buy the 10th gen, especially if you want the Apple Pencil 2nd gen. I mean, again, I like the function row of keys here. I like the fact that this, you know, resembles more of a laptop with the sort of tilt that you get. But this sits on your lap a little more nicely because like this is the part that comes in contact with your thighs. With regard to this, it's like you got this cutting into your thighs and like this also, like it's more of a balancing act with this. So it's nicer to use the Folio on a desk like this, whereas this is a little more versatile, although a little goofy, I would say. I'm looking forward to a second iteration or design for the Magic Keyboard. We'll have to see though. So yeah, this is something to keep in mind here. Although first-party accessories are very expensive, I just think at the end of the day, the Magic Keyboard is probably the better one, even though it doesn't have function row of keys. But you know, correct me if I'm wrong. I do like this, but again, you can get the Logitech Folio or Combo Touch for iPad Air as well if you really want that. So my recommendation after saying all of this, the iPad Air wins obviously, and the iPad Air 4 is similarly priced used compared to the 10th gen, so you get a better design, slimmer design, I would argue more neutral colors, and of course the Apple Pencil 2nd gen, which is really, really important if you want to have a nice iPad plus stylus experience. But you know, to each their own. Maybe you don't want to spend extra money or buy used. And the iPad 10th gen colors, I will argue here, specifically this pink color, it's pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie, but a color is not a reason to buy a tablet. Next up, let's talk about battery and camera performance. And it's a different time of day, I know I had to take a break. Shooting A-roll and live demos like this is just super easy and I never screw up. For your information, just thought I'd let you know. The camera capabilities and battery performance are consistent across the board here. 10 hours or 10 hours with web surfing. That's what Apple rates each and every one of these iPads, which is decent. That's what you normally get. That's their sort of standard. The back-facing camera capabilities here, all 12 megapixel, all 4K capable here. I'll show you the camera sensor here, very similar to what we have on the iPad Pro 2018. So, you know, the same across the board. The difference lies with camera performance with the front-facing cameras here. First and foremost, the iPad Air 5 and the iPad 10th gen have the newer 12 megapixel ultra-wide capable of delivering center stage, whereas the iPad Air predates that, so it has a 7 megapixel regular camera. So it's worse, but I mean, like, for most things like FaceTime and selfies and whatever, like, it's a camera, it'll do. I don't think it's particularly a thing to, you know, really take into consideration when buying one of these tablets. I mean, it's nice to have center stage and more resolution and better quality, but the camera on here is okay. Another difference in camera just placement really is with the 10th gen. The iPad Air and the Air 4 have it placed on the top or like right here on the side in this orientation, but the iPad 10th gen has it in the middle on the side, at least on the longer side. So in landscape mode, you have it more centered, which is, I think, better for video chatting with the Magic Keyboard Folio or in sort of more a laptop view, so you're no longer looking at the side. You're looking sort of just dead on like you would be with a laptop or a MacBook, so I like that. And what else here? Let me look at my notes. Yeah, no, that's it. So again, battery life is the same. Camera performance is pretty much the same with the exception of a lower quality camera on the Air 4 and a better placed camera, I would argue, on the 10th gen. So if that matters to you, go with the 10th gen. I wouldn't buy the 10th gen just because the camera's like this. I mean, so long as there's a front-facing camera, you should be good. That's my sort of take with iPads. If the camera was worse quality, I wouldn't care, you know, because I'm not taking beautiful pictures and videos with my iPad anyway. I'm glad Apple puts nice cameras into their iPads, you know, especially the iPad Pro, but even then, like, I'm really not using an ultra wide or shooting like HDR or ProRes video, you know, so the fact that there's cameras in tablets is enough, so I wouldn't buy any of these specifically for their camera capabilities. Center stage, though, I would say is a pretty cool feature, but again, not worth the extra money if you're considering, you know, the Air 4, for example, which doesn't have it. But regardless of what iPad you end up going with here, buying the right charger is always an important decision, which brings us to today's video sponsor, UGREEN, and their Nexode 140 watt PD charger. This thing is pretty heavy duty and can accommodate charging up some serious devices all at once. It's designed really nicely with high quality, dark, stealthy plastic and minimal branding. More importantly though, it packs 2 high output USB-C ports, one of which can deliver the entire 140 watt throughput thanks to PD 3.1 technology. With this kind of power, you can charge a MacBook Pro 16-inch to 56% in just 30 minutes. Once again though, you also get another USB-C port, which outputs a still impressive 100 watts and an additional 22.5 watt USB-A port for smaller devices. And for what it provides, this Nexode charger outputs less heat thanks to their thermal guard tech on the inside, even when you're using all 3 ports at once to juice up your power-hungry devices. And as always, I'll leave a link in the video description if you're interested in checking out this amazing accessory. And finally, let's discuss my favorite topic, performance. And this is an important one because on the surface, they all look the same. They all operate relatively similarly, but one of these tablets is not like the other, and I'm sure you can imagine which one it is, but we'll get to that. So the similarities here, the 10th gen and the Air 4 have the A14 chip, which is still great. It will run the iPadOS experience perfectly fine for multitasking, web surfing, anything you want to do, note-taking, perfectly fine. So if you are a more typical user, you're not doing anything super crazy gaming, video editing, whatever, these tablets are more than fine. But if you want more juice, you're definitely going to want to go with the iPad Air 5 because Apple was kind enough to put the M1 chip in here. I thought that this iPad was going to have the A15, but no, they decided to put a whole ass Mac chip in here, and it's very capable. You don't get as much RAM as you would with like a higher end iPad Pro, but we got 8 gigs of RAM and the M1 chip, which is really substantial. I mean, you nearly have double the multi-core score here compared to the 10th gen and the Air 4, which means a lot. It means that any more difficult tasks that you're doing are going to be done almost twice as well, so keep that in mind. But again though, for all intents and purposes, they pushed the iPad OS experience very smoothly. You're not gonna notice like too much of a difference between the Air 5 and like the Air 4, for example, if you're just doing basic tasks. So again, A14 for the casual people, M1 if you wanna do heavier stuff or you wanna have more headroom for years to come. But let's get into the differences though. I mentioned that USB-C ports weren't the same in the design portion. So yes, we do have USB-C here for charging and data, but they do not operate at the same speed. The iPad 10th gen is basically operating USB-C at lightning speeds, USB 2 speeds, so 480 megabits per second, which isn't terrible, but it isn't great. It can only output 4K at 30 hertz if you want to connect this to a monitor, so that's pretty disappointing. The iPad Air 4 outputs at 5 gigabits per second, so I believe that can output 4K at 60 hertz, which is better than 30 hertz. But the iPad Air 5 takes the cake with a 10 gigabits per second USB-C port, which also accommodates Stage Manager, which we're going to mention in a minute or two here. So yeah, very different speeds with the USB-C ports. Take that whatever way you will. For most people, the USB 2 speeds are not going to be an issue if you're just using this port to charge and transfer some small files, but the Air 5 is definitely in the sweet spot in the middle to where you're going to be able to transfer files very quickly, but you know, of course, not accommodate a more advanced feature like external display support. And that's the next thing I want to discuss, external monitor support with the M1 chip. This was a new feature launched earlier this year with Stage Manager, and it's huge. I mean, it makes your iPad more than just an iPad. I'm somebody that likes to use a laptop, for example, but when I want to get down to work, I will often sit down at a desk and just expand whatever I'm doing on an external monitor. And although it's not comparable in every way to macOS, the fact that you can sit down with a Magic Keyboard or any keyboard accessory, plug into a USB-C or HDMI monitor and just like go to town, have a full screen Safari window or have multiple different windows open in their Stage Manager magnetic kind of weird view that they're still trying to figure out. It's a whole like new experience. So the money that you pay for this extra I think is well worth it, because you not only get an iPad, but sort of a hybrid, you know, iPad, desktop, laptop like experience here. So that is what you get with the M1 chip, not only more horsepower, but an entirely new experience, which I think makes the iPad Air 5 such a valuable tablet here compared to the 10th gen and the Air 4. But you know, we each, or all of us, use our tablets differently. If you have no intention to use your iPad as anything else but an iPad or a tablet, these tablets, the Air 4 and the 10th gen, are probably going to suit you very well. Something else I want to mention is connectivity. The 10th gen and the Air 5 have 5G connectivity, if that's important to you. The iPad Air 4 does not. It just supports 4G or LTE, which is fine, but you know, 5G is a thing now. It is wonderful, especially if you live in a big city. So if you want to have the best cellular connectivity for whatever ludicrous price you're paying to your carrier, then you know, you're going to be able to better take advantage of your carrier network with an Air 5 or 10th gen. So with everything said, what are my final recommendations here? Well, I'm here to say the 10th gen, while it is a great iPad, it's still weird, and I still would probably go with the Air 4 over it, especially because if you buy the Air 4 used, it's probably going to be comparable in price or cheaper. And considering that it's slimmer, trimmer, and packs the Apple Pencil 2nd gen, I mean, hands down, it's a better experience, despite the fact that with the 10th gen, the display is easier to replace or cheaper to replace. You get a better placed camera, maybe a color that you want, 5G, and an exclusive first-party accessory, the Magic Keyboard Folio. But again, though, better color on here, better display, slimmer Apple Pencil 2nd gen, higher bandwidth with the USB-C port, all of that. Better colors, in my opinion. If you can snag an Air 4 used, please, by all means, do that. It is still a great value tablet and has the same processor as the 10th gen. But if you're in store, you don't want to go to the hassle of getting a used device, you just want to buy an iPad, this one isn't bad at all. I just wouldn't use it because of the lack of the Apple Pencil 2nd gen. If this had an Apple Pencil 2nd gen, I would be singing its praises a little more. But it doesn't, and I find that really stupid, once again. As for the iPad Air 5, I think this is the best value iPad in existence right now. The iPad Pro even isn't as valuable as this, I think, because you're just paying so much extra for some features that you might not even appreciate, like a more advanced camera and a high refresh rate display. Sorry, every single time I shoot a video, my nose or my eyes or just anything just starts itching like crazy, and I have to like redo. So I'm just gonna rub my eye here as I wrap up this video. But yeah, the Air 5 is just such a crazy device. You get the M1 chip in here, you get a great size display, you get Apple Pencil 2nd Gen, you get 10 gigabits per second bandwidth speed with the USB-C port, stereo speakers, and the M1 chip with the external monitor support that I love so much. Great size, great colors, great power. It might not be an iPad Pro, but it's super close to it. And yeah, I mean, if you're gonna buy an iPad, you want a bunch of headroom, you want a bunch of versatility, this is the iPad that you're gonna wanna go with, hands down, even though it's more expensive. I'd recommend getting a higher capacity one because 64 gigs is really hard to work with, but even still, like, let me just double check the cost. I'll look it up here because I don't wanna spread misinformation here. Okay, so $749 for 256 gigabytes is a great value. You get a tablet with a decent amount of storage, great display, insane processor, desktop / laptop-like capability, hooking up with an external monitor. So again, this is the iPad I would buy if I were you. But if you don't need it and you want to buy used, go for the Air 4. And if you just want a convenient, just iPad that's just an iPad, the 10th gen is going to do you well, I think. And that is about it for this video. Once again, check out my link to UGREEN listed in the video description. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.